Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something that has probably driven you absolutely up the wall at some point. Dealing with people who constantly apologize but literally never change. I'm your host, and I absolutely love breaking down complex human behaviors into clear visual takeaways. So if you've ever felt completely drained by a relationship that feels like a broken record, grab your focus. We are going to unpack exactly what's going on beneath the surface and discover the hidden psychology that can actually transform these relationships.
Okay, picture this infuriating scenario. We've all been there, right? Someone gives you this deep, seemingly profound apology. They bow their head, they look incredibly remorseful, and you're thinking, okay, great, finally, we're getting somewhere. But then, literally 5 minutes later, you look over and they are giggling, maybe playing a game, just acting as if absolutely nothing happened. The switch is so fast it gives you whiplash, and frankly, makes you want to pull your hair out.
Section 1. The mystery of empty apologies. Is it really a lack of sincerity?
So, when you witness this maddening cycle play out, the deep apologies followed by an instant reset to laughing and joking, your very first instinct is probably anger. You assume they're just mocking you, right? That they don't have an ounce of real sincerity or respect. It makes you just want to walk away. But here's the thing. The psychology actually points us in a completely different direction. Believe it or not, this isn't malice. It's actually a deeply ingrained, honestly kind of tragic defense mechanism.
Which brings us to Section 2, self-neglect and lost identity, beneath the surface of bad behavior. To really get this, we have to look way below the surface, because it might actually shock you to learn that in the exact, precise moment they are apologizing, their remorse is 100% genuine. Seriously, even if it's just for a split second, that guilt is real. But almost instantly, that feeling gets hijacked by something much, much darker from their past.
The real culprit here is something called self-neglect. See, because these individuals often grew up completely accustomed to being discarded, or maybe they just totally lacked a support system to gently correct them when they were young, they actually lost the basic psychological mechanism needed to regulate their own actions. They've become so incredibly used to treating themselves poorly that they literally don't have the emotional brakes to control how they behave around others.
Think of it like a devastating internal chain reaction. They feel genuine remorse. But right on its heels, these intense past memories of isolation and abandonment just flood in. They are essentially caught in this massive tidal wave where past trauma completely overrides their genuine intention to do better. They get so emotionally overwhelmed that they completely lose behavioral control, and that forces them right back into a repeating loop of failure. They aren't consciously choosing to be flippant. They are just being swept away.
And this brings us to a really profound reality. You aren't dealing with some manipulative adult trying to play mind games with you. You're dealing with a deeply wounded child, trapped inside an adult's body, reacting out of sheer emotional overwhelm. The giggling, the video games, that's not them brushing you off. It's a desperate distraction technique just to cope with the crushing weight of their own inadequacy.
After years and years of this exact cycle, messing up, getting scolded, apologizing, and failing all over again, a crushing sense of learned helplessness sets in. Their brain actually adopts the person who gets scolded as their core fundamental identity. They just lose the will to maintain correct behavior because this really dark despair takes root. The belief that, well, they're inevitably going to fail and get yelled at anyway, so why even try?
Section 3. Redefining true sincerity. It's not about bowing your head.
So, if a perfectly bowed head isn't actual sincerity, then what is? We often think a polite, perfectly structured apology is the absolute pinnacle of respect. But a manualized, rehearsed apology can actually trigger more distrust, right? Because it just feels like a script. Real sincerity is taking off the mask. It's having the courage to deliver raw, unpolished honesty directly from the inside out.
Look at the stark contrast between these two approaches. A you message, like "your actions made me mad," basically acts as an attack. It immediately forces their defensive walls to shoot right up. But an I message, like "I felt very sad," completely bypasses those walls. You aren't pointing a finger. You are rooted in your own vulnerable truth, and that allows your words to finally reach their heart.
Section 4. The power of believing. How we praise matters.
Once we learn how to bypass those defenses, we really have to rethink how we offer support. Trying to just correct someone who is so used to being scolded simply doesn't work. Saying something like, "you can do it if you try," sounds positive on the surface, but psychologically, it's a conditional evaluation. It secretly points out that they haven't been trying. Contrast that with, "I believed you could do it." That offers absolute trust. For someone who constantly expects to fail, showing them you have unwavering faith in them hits them in a place they absolutely never expected.
Just look at the legendary boxing trainer Customato and Mike Tyson. D'Amato, man, he was not a gentle, polite communicator. His words were rough, unpolished, and fierce. But because those words were anchored in absolute trust, this deep, unshakable belief in Tyson, they pierced right through the massive defenses of a deeply wounded young man. The exact words don't have to be perfect, guys. The feeling of absolute trust is what actually heals.
Section 5. Change yourself to influence others. The ultimate empowerment.
So how do we practically apply all this psychology? Well, let this sink in for a second. You cannot change other people. You just can't. When we try, we end up completely exhausted because we're constantly demanding something from them. Now, this might sound like a defeat, but realizing you cannot force someone else to change is actually the most liberating and empowering truth you can embrace. It takes all the pressure off them and puts the key right back in your own hands.
And here is exactly how that power plays out in a step-by-step ripple effect. By using tools like iMessages and absolute trust, you change your own inputs. And when your behavior changes, step 2 naturally follows. The other person's reaction shifts, because they're no longer being triggered in the exact same way. This naturally softens the atmosphere in step 3, which quietly but effectively shifts the entire dynamic of the relationship from the ground up. You see, you don't force change, you inspire it.
But keep this in mind. None of these communication techniques will work unless your words carry the heavy weight of a person who is fundamentally honest with themselves. If you don't keep promises to yourself, your words are just going to lack substance. But when you live with absolute integrity, when your words truly align with your actions, your communication carries this undeniable weight that naturally commands respect without ever having to demand it.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a pivotal question to reflect on. Can you honestly say, this is good about your own life? Because true influence over others, the kind that actually heals learned helplessness and breaks that exhausting cycle of empty apologies, always starts with a deep, uncompromising look in the mirror. You change the world around you, one self-transformed interaction at a time. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.